bank. Nope, he might eat it. I think he got it. He got it. Pretty good fish. Come here, buddy. That's a skinny post-spawn fish. Ate that fluke stick. And that's what I'm talking about. The spawn's not really going right now, but that's just a post-spawn fish that was just still hanging out there. You can tell that's probably a female. It could be an old buck. It was just sitting up there hanging out after the spawn. Not necessarily on bed, but I was using my eyes going down the bank, covering water. Saw it sitting up there, and if they don't see you, they bite really easily. There he goes. The good thing about a wacky worm in the spring is it's a weightless bait, so you kind of think of it as kind of a slower presentation, but it's one of the baits I actually use to cover water, because the good thing in the spring, like this time of year, they generally eat it almost before you can engage the reel. If you throw it to a likely area, like a dock walkway or just a shady area, they generally have it about the time you engage the reel. You gotta watch your line real close and just be ready, because usually it doesn't take much fishing. I see a lot of people throw in a weightless worm, and because it takes forever to get to the bottom, they fish really slow. But you really don't have to this time of year specifically. It's one of my favorite baits for actually covering water when I'm going down the bank. So the reason the wacky worm's always been my go-to in the spring and when I'm fishing down the bank like this is I've got the trolling motor on 14 now, like 3/4, and I can just go down the bank and throw it at likely looking spots. I've talked about this before. Like I do like to actually sight fish. Sometimes your most effective way, rather than sight fishing, is just to toss this worm ahead of you at things that look like beds. Like there's a boat ramp there with a kind of a bright spot side. May or may not be a bed, but it's a likely spot, and I can just fling up there. If there's one there, he'll eat it pretty quick, and I don't have to stop and actually fish for him. And I don't have to switch rods when I get to a decent looking dock like this. I can skip it under in the shade of the dock. There's one right there. It's a decent one. Catch a lot of kind of bucks this time of year. They're garden fry around docks, or some of them are on bed under the docks. Just a lot of different things like that. It's a real effective bait for doing it. Not a big fish. He's more than likely garden fry up there, but this bait just gets bit when they're shallow, and you can cover a lot of water with it. Fish it really fast rather than what you would think you fish a weightless worm. I'm just basically, you notice that when that fish got it instantly, I'm not necessarily waiting on it to sink to the bottom. Works in any depth water from 1 to 15 foot, 20 foot, however deep, because usually the fish are sitting high. Doing this style of fishing in the spring, your two biggest factors to be effective doing it is, number one, your eyes. You need to pay attention the whole time, look for likely areas, and then you got to cover a lot of water. It's not fishing like this. In the spring in general, there's usually not congregations of fish. Some lakes there are, but in general, there's not congregations of fish anywhere. So you just keep the trolling motor on high and keep covering water and throwing at likely scenarios, and hope you land on quite a few a day that are holding fish. And the more you fish kind of covering a lot of water in the spring, the more you become kind of accustomed to the likely scenarios. Like I'll fish really fast down, like this stretch here doesn't really look that interesting to me. Like I'm not saying there's not fish on it, but it doesn't have anything specific that jumps out to me to throw at. So I'll actually cover water a little quicker down through here. I still make casts and hope to catch one, but I'm moving on to an area I think looks a little bit better, whether it's some shade or whether it's, you know, some docks I think look a little bit better, or anything that looks like a likely scenario. I go really fast down the stuff that doesn't look that great, then still move quick on the other stuff, but slow down and just fish the high percentage stuff is what I'm looking for. I don't care if I miss 2 or 3 down through here, because I probably run over 20 more throughout the day by covering so much water. When you're fishing docks in the spring and post-spawn, especially with wacky worm, really anytime, but when I'm doing this, I like to when you get the right sun angle, we're starting to get a little later in the afternoon now. It's a little more difficult to see on the bank. But what it does is it kind of casts an angle of sun under the dock where you can actually kind of see under the docks. And most of those fry guarding fish, things like that, they sit really, really high. So a lot of the fish you'll catch off docks, you might actually see sitting under there. So I pay attention to every dock I go around to kind of look at that sun angle and try to see that silhouette of a fish sitting under there, whether you see the fry or not, or a big female just sitting up there waiting to go spawn. This dock is what I'm talking about. When you get the right angle of sun, film that dock. When you get the right angle of sun on these docks, you can actually see under them. That dock's 3 foot deep or so, but if the fish was sitting high under there, I'd be able to see it because of the angle of the sun. It's got the perfect silhouette, so it's always good to pay attention and look under them. You catch a lot of fish that you actually see under before you get to them. Oh, that was a bad cast. I see some fry sitting on this pole right here. I made a horrible first cast. Probably scared the fish off. I see the fish now. He sees it. He swam around it. Didn't eat it. I always talk about fishing shallow like this, the element of surprise that you always catch them on your first cast. Well, that stock right here, I made a bad cast and the fish kind of followed it out. And now I'm having trouble, can't get him to bite. But if I'd have made a good first cast, probably would have caught him and been done with it already. So that's the importance of making a really good first cast. When it comes to wacky worm, everybody knows I like a Zoom fluke stick. Green pumpkin's my go-to, but these come with a tail on them. I just break that tail off. It's good for certain things, but when you're wacky worming, I like it to fall without the tail because it falls better. So just make it a stick bait like that. And I hook it right in the middle. I use a decoy Wacky HD hook, 1 or 2/0. This is a 2/0. I'm fishing for largemouth. I usually use a 2/0. And I just hook it right in the middle, no band, just like that. And I use spinning rod, obviously, but I use anywhere from an 8 to a 12-pound leader, depending on what I'm fishing around, how I want it to fall, things like that. But I would say 10 is my go-to. And then I use 10-pound Yozuri Super Braid on my Hartwell Magic arc spinning rod. Hartwell Magic I designed specifically for a wacky worm. Skips real well. It's got a good tip to it, so you don't break that lighter line. And it's a shorter rod, 6'10". It's easier to skip under docks than say a 7'1" or 7'2". But in an arc gravity spinning reel, this is my setup, and I think it makes it more effective to fish this wacky worm. And like I said, when I'm running down the bank with it, I cover a lot of water. This is not, the Zoom fluke stick is not a bait I let sink real deep. This is a good shallow water wacky worm bait. I use a slinky if I want to sink a little bit deeper. But the fluke stick's a great, less than 5 foot of water, run down the bank, wacky worming bait.